Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Dr. Shealy, we've got Brad engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Thank you so much, Brad, for doing that. And let me give out the phone number. If you'd like to call us live between the hours of 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 605-477-3249. And there's a link to your instructors on the website, USAPrepares.com, on the instructors tab. And if you'd like to contact Dr. Norman Shealy, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Dr. Shealy, anything new that you'd like to share with us before we get into the rest of the broadcast?
Well, for months I have been trying to find proof that sapphire is much stronger piezoelectric than quartz. And I finally did it yesterday. It is indeed not only in hardness second only to diamonds, but its piezoelectric benefits, that is, its ability to store, send, and transmit electromagnetic energy, is considerably higher than quartz. It's important because of our sapphire-enhanced adrenoscalar device.
Okay, is that the official name, adrenoscalar device?
That's the official name, but it's also always sapphire-enhanced also.
Okay. Well, I've got one right here at the farmhouse.
Yes, well, it'll be a little bit more elegant than the handmade model eventually, but yes, it does work, and I love it.
Well, I wanted to share with our class, I've mentioned this before, that you've provided me with a loaner model, a prototype, an early production model of the sapphire-enhanced adrenomedullin scalar device. And I've got it running here at the house, and I've had it running for, about a week. And there's a red light, a blinking red light that tells me that it is active, and I've measured it. I've measured some of the frequencies with the tri-field meter, and yes, it absolutely does have frequencies that come out, a very, very small amount, and uses very little power, less than, about 1 watt of power consumption. And I can tell you that Mrs. Finelli sleeps very, very soundly with it, and so do I. And so, I mean, those are the findings that I have experienced, and they have been unchanged for a week, no change for a week. So, I used to get up many, many times during the night. I'd wake up. Doesn't happen now. And same thing with Mrs. Finelli. She sleeps very, very soundly. So if that is that in concert with what you're hearing, feeling, seeing, observing in your trials?
All the way Big Blue, yes.
Yeah. Any difference? Or is that, is that exactly what you're experiencing?
Exactly the same.
Okay. And what about, do we have any profound health changes as a result of the sapphire-enhanced adrenomedullin
yes,
scalar?
Better sleep, lower blood pressure, less stress, and lower blood sugar.
I'm sorry, what was that about the blood sugar?
Lower.
Okay. Well, you said less stress. I got to tell you that
people feel less stress. And of course, we have all the measurements of decreased adrenomedullin, as well as decreased inflammation in the blood, as well as decreased free radicals, all of which are indications chemically of less stress.
Okay, and I've got to tell you that I keep hearing over and over the word stress, not necessarily in our family, but people outside of our family are talking about dealing with stress, coping with stress, stress in their lives, of all kinds of stress, and they're having more and more trouble coping with stress. And when I talk about stress, currently, I'm talking about family members who are ill, family members who are dying, the extra burden of, and maybe I shouldn't use that word, the extra time spent out of the normal routine helping those family members who are really, really ill. I learned of a family yesterday. The father of let's say a 50-year-old man is dying of cancer, and this is on the East Coast. And the family is doing everything they can to bathe him and clean him and medicate him and do all those things. And they can't seem to handle it anymore. I'm not sure why, but they can't seem to handle it. And the stress is taking its toll on the rest of the family. So they want to put him in a home, in like a nursing home. I don't quite understand it. It would not happen in here right now at our house. We would do everything we could to take care of a person who was sick. But the stress, that's one kind of stress. Then there's the job stress, and then there's the financial stress, and then there's this the nonstop telephone calls that come in, and people just aren't able to cope with it as well as I believe they used to be able to. Is that something that you're seeing too? That less, other than being impacted positively with your Sapphire Enhanced Adrenomedullin Scalar device, other than that, are you seeing people having a real tough time coping with what they call stress?
Oh, yeah. No question about it. Vince, we've talked about this off and on, I think, but the world is in utter chaos. The world, everywhere. And, I mean, you take this frequent hurricanes, this, that, and the others, this stupid economy. Detach.
Yeah, but for some people, they can't detach. I mean, if they're in harm's way and the storm is coming at them.
No, well, the interesting thing is, if you know you're going to die, just relax and enjoy it. I mean, I'm not being totally facetious.
Right.
I honestly cannot allow myself, if I cannot change it, to allow myself to get upset over it.
But if you live in Florida, you know it's coming. You just don't know when.
Well, I wouldn't live in Florida. See, that's the other thing. Personally, all my life, practically, at least as an adult, I've known I wouldn't choose to live in that area. I wouldn't choose to live on the West Coast.
Right.
I wouldn't choose to live near the New Madrid Fault. I mean, you make choices based upon known stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and we have too. Now, the New Madrid Fault is right here in Missouri, but Dr. Shealy and I live hundreds of miles away from it. And when we were looking for where we live now, we looked at where are there nuclear reactors, where are we downwind from what, where are we away from farms that are spraying tobacco insecticides, in the air to get to the plants. I mean, where can we avoid being downwind and downhill from potential problems? Like, we don't live below a dam. We don't live where there could be a massive flood. We don't live near a man-made lake that's uphill from us. We don't live near...
even the ocean, anywhere.
Right. Well, here's an interesting story, Dr. Shealy. Virginia Tech has a well, and there was one of their instructors was measuring the water column in the well when the tsunami, there was a tsunami that hit Japan. and they found that the water level in the well rose about, I think, about almost 200 feet inside the fresh water well. And what that tells us is that all of the, the oceans are connected to the underground aquifers. They're connected. So the water is at, there's an equalization. The water pressure of the drinking water, if you will, the aquifers are pressing outward, and the ocean is pressing inward. And as long as they're at equilibrium, it's okay. But if they're not, then we're going to be drinking salt water from the ocean.
Yuck, 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 yuck.
So that was an interesting phenomenon that I learned about. So the waterways are interconnected, and then all the oceans are connected. So now, if you want to extrapolate out from there, we've got all kinds of radioactive substances in the ocean as a result of nuclear testing, atomic testing, Fukushima, background radiation, illegal dumping. Then we have all the waste that are in the ocean. And what I said about Virginia Tech, So now we know that our aquifers are connected to the ocean.
Indeed. Vince, are you unequivocally convinced that the evil empire is causing these hurricanes?
I'm convinced that we are manipulating the weather, and we have been since we've been seeding the clouds, I should say, which has been going on for decades. I'm convinced that there are a lot of things that we are doing intentionally and unintentionally. And let me give you an example. In the east coast of the United States, we have heating systems that are, some of them are pretty old. In the cities, we have heating systems that are oil-fired, and let's just talk about them when we come back. I'll talk about oil burners and my thoughts on what oil burners are doing to pollute our Earth. We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, class. And so, Dr. Shealy, to answer your question about the storms, we've got Hurricane Harvey and Irma, and we've got the massive destruction there, the flooding there. We've got about 5 more storms that have the potential to be pretty significant in the Atlantic, heading toward the coast of, toward the islands and toward Florida. So that's all happening, and these are storms that used to be once in 500 years, and now it's like every couple of weeks. So I think there's a link, and we're talking about I guess my thoughts on climate change, and here's how I look at it. I used to live in the East Coast, and back in the 1980s, I'd buy some single-family homes and apartment houses, and some of them were heated with oil. So I know a little bit about these oil burners. And typically, a typical home would either have one 275-gallon fuel oil tank, which was the same as diesel, but it's called home heating oil sometimes. It's the same stuff. And a typical home would use about 2 tanks of those 275-gallon capacity tanks per heating season. Typical home. Or if they had an underground buried 550-gallon tank, they'd use one of those. But you don't fill them all the way. So a 550-gallon tank would only be filled to 500 gallons, and a 275-gallon would be filled to 250. So either way, you'd be burning about 500 gallons of number 2 fuel oil or number 2 diesel or heating oil, whatever you want to call it, same thing, per house per winter. And a lot of houses, and that's a lot of fuel. And if you add to that, what about these tractor trailers? Okay, well, tractor trailers, if, my calculations show that they use about 70 gallons a day of diesel, 5 days a week, 350 gallons a week that tractor trailers use. And then you add to that the automobiles, And then you add to that the jets that are flying around the skies. So there's a lot of fuel being burned. And most of that fuel goes to heat, especially in the home heating system. So add all that together, we're warming the planet. And we're not the only ones doing this. It's more than just the East Coast. Then you have the natural gas heating systems. Then you have the electric power plants. And, you look at those nuclear towers that have the cooling stacks. And so we're heating the water with nuclear energy. We're heating the air. We're warming the planet that way. Some people say that's nonsense. It's the sun that's doing, almost all of it. But I believe we're contributing to it. So you put all that together, and I believe, and then you add to it HAARP and the weapons of weather change. Put all that together, and I believe we've done so much damage that, yes, we are causing many of these problems. Fracking, earthquakes. We're having more earthquakes than I can ever remember. And we're having more deaths and more disease than ever. So when you talk about the evil empire, yeah, I believe that the evil empire is responsible for a lot of the problems that we have, a lot of the pollution that we have. I know that you have never been out on a boat or a barge that has taken trash out to sea and just dumped it. However, governments do that kind of thing. We don't do that kind of thing. We don't send projectiles into space and then litter space with trash and then say, wow, there's so much trash out here, the satellites are going to bump into it. We got to be careful because it can tear up our satellites. We don't do things like that. We're way more careful than that. We don't take trash out. I mean, yes, we have trash here at our farm, but I don't take the trash can and dump it on the front lawn, and I don't take the trash can and get in the back of a pickup truck while a family member drives it and then dump it out along the road. I don't do that. I'm really careful with what we do, and I try to not create any more trash than we have to. But the evil empire, I don't think they're anywhere near as careful as we are. Hospital waste, hospital needles. Remember years and years ago, you would find that people would say, boy, they got stuck with a hospital needle by going to the beach. They go to the beach and they walk out in the water and they get stuck by a hospital needle that was thrown out and dumped in the sea. And it came back toward the shore, and people were getting stuck with them. Yeah, Dr. Shealy, to answer your question, I believe the evil empire has caused a lot of the problems, the weather modifications, and a lot of the storms that we're seeing right now. I believe it. Now, many people will disagree with me, and I guess we'll hear from them. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, so what I said during the last segment about my feeling about climate change, I think is a little different from what many think. But yes, I believe that we have had an impact on climate change. I think that we are very near or have passed the tipping point where we can affect return to normal weather. I believe that the weather forecasters are having a really tough time forecasting the weather. Years ago, we could read the Farmer's Almanac, and that was printed well over a year in advance, and you could see what was going to happen on May 2nd. August 3rd, you'd know whether it was going to rain, and it was pretty darn accurate compared to the weather forecasts of today, and that was well over a year in advance. So, we did have climate that was stable. I remember that from the 1960s. I remember it would rain about once a week, almost on a regular schedule. Now we don't have rains like that. We don't have weather that is as predictable. And we have these violent swings in temperature, which can be 30 degrees in a 24-hour period. Right now, actually a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with Miles, one of our senior instructors in Europe, and they've already had snow.
Interestingly, back about 80 or 81, John Hamaker, Hamaker, with Don Weaver, wrote a book called The Survival of Civilization. He's a retired, engineer of some kind from wherever they make cars. And when he retired,
like Detroit?
he started studying weather historically.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks in The Survival of Civilization about recurrent glaciation and interglaciation periods, roughly 90,000 years of glaciation and 10,000 years of non-glaciation. And according to him, historically, essentially every 100,000 years we complete a cycle, and he predicted that if we did not remineralize the soil, and he felt the whole thing was the result of wind and rain and erosion, getting rid of all the minerals that kept the plants growing well, and that whether or not people were here, we had glaciation and interglaciation periods. And he predicted that if we did not reglaciate the world by 1995, we would go into glaciation again. Now, he didn't give a time period, but the implication was we already are over our usual 10,000 years. And so instead of, and there is always warming just before it happens. And in fact, a guy named La Violetta, a physicist, wrote a book, Earth Under Fire, who talked about the period just before glaciation getting extremely hot and erratic, and then all of a sudden it gets hot enough that during one winter there's enough evaporation from the tropics that the snowfall never goes never goes away in the northern hemisphere, and glaciation can take place within a decade or so. So there's also this variation, although again I personally think the evidence is strong that the idiot evil empire is altering the climate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you and I are in perfect agreement about nuclear power. The power that is generated with
crazy,
yeah,
total psychotic insanity.
The analogy that I'm thinking of is that so we invent and build the very first automobile, and it's a gasoline-powered vehicle, and we build it in a room, and really there's no door that opens wide enough to let this vehicle out, and so we start it up, and there are no windows, so we start it up inside that room, and we ride it around, and with the fumes coming out and have no place to go, and that's kind of what we did with nuclear power. We have a byproduct, the exhaust, if you will, the waste product. There's no place to put it except here on planet Earth. There's no place that we can dump it except in our own backyard here on Earth. And that's what we've done. And we've allowed these con artists and these easily bribable Congress critters to allow this to happen because of our ignorance.
I believe that every president, since idiot original criminal Woodrow Wilson, who introduced the Fed, which is unconstitutional, has been a pawn of the evil empire, the committee, and a minimum of 50% of Congress. Mm-hmm. I think when they get into Congress, they tell them either you go with us or we'll kill you or you won't get reelected.
Well, I can tell you in a very small, tiny microcosm of that, when I ran for the board of directors of the electric cooperative, I was told in no uncertain terms that we can have discussions privately in the boardroom, but we will have a united front when we exit the boardroom and we're asked by, the members of the cooperative how we feel about the decisions that the board made. We will all be in unison. We all will stand together. Now, I was told that. They even wanted me to sign a document to that effect. So, and that's a little tiny microcosm of a little tiny electric cooperative of 35,000 customers.
And you know what I would tell them? Cram it up yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. But what I'm saying is, it happens even at the lower levels, like in a electric cooperative. So yeah, I believe exactly what you're saying is true. I believe that Congress the people who are selected for Congress to run are weak. And they're selected because of their weaknesses. And because of the weaknesses, they can be more easily controlled and bribed and manipulated.
Well,
and,
I know the story of Faust was an allegory for evil, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's more evil than ever.
Right. But the thing I don't understand, and it's hard for me to understand this, is how can these people be so ignorant, stupid, careless, reckless with the future of their offspring? What I'm saying is these Congress critters are making such a mess for their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and they seem to not care. It's foreign to me.
Ignorance is the failure to accept truth or fact. It's that simple. So they are beyond ignorant. They are brainwashed, dead, no frontal lobes. And basically what they're missing is the ability to discriminate right from wrong. So they are frontal lobotomized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I believe that. I see that. And I don't think there's anything we can do about it. It is almost impossible for one of we the people to become in a position to make much change. I've done my part, I think. I've run for the school board. I've tried to I couldn't. Dr. Shealy, the system is so corrupt. I ran against a convicted felon who was a native of the area. He was running for re-election for the school board. He blew my doors off. He won, hands down, easily. A convicted felon. And everybody knew it. And I came in as an educator. I came in as a computer guy who could fix the computer network and build it into something that would actually work instead of just a bunch of computers that didn't work. I came in as someone who wanted books rather than electronic learning. I came in standing for teachers rather than study hall proctors. I didn't want the teachers to become relegated to sitting and watching the students behind computer screens and having computer screens educate them, meaning computer instruction. I wanted teachers to teach. I wanted the teachers, and I even told the teachers, how much time do you spend in class? How is your day spent? I met with them. And they spend Dr. Shealy, they spend a lot of their time filling out reports to the federal government. And I said to them, okay, we won't do that. We'll stop doing that.
Then the average physician who works within the system has an overhead of 60%. The overhead is caused by the blank, blank, blank government. 60%
now, when you say,
to take care of all that paperwork.
Now, when you say overhead, are you talking about time or are you talking about money spent to have everybody and build the systems to
I'm talking about money
complete.
spent to have more people and all the time that all of it requires of everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the evidence is overwhelming that this requirement to use a computer for all of your records, if you're within the system, totally disrupts patient-physician interaction.
I remember when medical offices would have paper folders, and that would be, that would be the records, and the doctor could open that chart, flip through a few pages very quickly, and it was all right there. Could look at it very quickly, and update it very quickly, right then and there with a ballpoint pen.
Well, that's what I still do. I refuse to do it any other way. That's why I dropped out of the system about 1997, 20 years ago. Well,
one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, Dr. Shealy, is vitamin C. And just to whet the appetites of our class, vitamin C, I remember my dad saying, you got those sniffles? Vitamin C. Got a cold? Vitamin C. But if I remember correctly, it was 60 milligrams. Let's talk about that when we come back.
Right.
Class Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, and we're talking about vitamin C. And I remember back in the 1950s, 1960s, if I had sniffles or someone in the house had sniffles, my dad would say vitamin C. Take a vitamin C. Take one every few hours. Maybe take as many as 4 a day. But Dr. Shealy, I think that if I remember correctly, those vitamin C tablets were typically about 60 milligrams back then. And
you are right, and actually that is still the recommended daily allowance of your insane federal government.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have in front of me a jar of 120 capsules, and it says Dr. Shealy's Youth Formula, okay? And it says, proven in Dr. Shealy's research to rejuvenate DHEA naturally. Now, your supplement, which I take, and I'll tell you the dosage in just a minute, has vitamin C, 2,000 milligrams, and it's 3,333% of the daily value. It also has MSM, 1,000 milligrams, and it has molybdenum of 60 micrograms. Now, that is way, way, way above what the current advice is as the minimum daily adult requirement.
Oh yeah.
How do you discuss the difference between what they're saying and what you're saying? And by the way, I take your supplements, but I at your direction, I'm taking 2 vitamin C's of 2,000 milligrams twice a day. So I'm taking 4 a day.
Well, so am I, and have been for years now. As early as the late 1970s, Emmanuel Saraskin, a physician and dentist on the University of Alabama Medical School staff, demonstrated that the optimal, at that time, almost 40 years ago, intake of vitamin C was a minimum of 1,000 milligrams a day. When I did my research on DHEA, revival, if you will, and because most people are low after age 40, especially, I found that 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C, if you put a minimum of 1,000 milligrams, of MSM with it, would raise DHEA, the dehydroepiandrosterone, the most essential hormone for energy and immune and everything else. But if you didn't put the MSM with it, it wouldn't work. And molybdenum adds a little bit, and beta-1,3-glucan adds a little bit. So when you take the full youth formula, the average person will increase their DHEA production approximately 60%. And most people are running roughly 25% of normal by age 50 or 60.
Okay. Now, what will increasing DHEA naturally do for us? What benefit will we see, Dr. Shealy?
Number 1 is energy. Number 2 is immune function, so stamina. I mean, man, I'm knocking wood. I haven't had a cold or flu in 10 years. Mm-hmm. So those are the 2 biggies. But it helps you maintain your whole endocrine system, especially testosterone in men. I mean, so it's sometimes called the mother hormone, but its most essential is immune function and energy.
And when we come back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements, can we talk about vitamin C in wound healing, vitamin C as an antioxidant, vitamin C as a cancer therapy additive, and repairing connective tissue that's weak, and improving capillary action. Can we talk about all those things?
You bet.
There you go. It's coming up next. Dr. Shealy, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Dr. Shealy's in the front of the classroom today, medical doctor, and we're talking about vitamin C. Dr. Shealy, vitamin C is something that was highly recommended, highly used back in the 1950s, 1960s, and it was inexpensive. It was something that I believe most homes had, and when we got the sniffles, the sneezes, and so forth, that was the first thing that we looked for a treatment. And it seems today that not every medical provider is looking toward vitamin C as a great way to go. I do. I look at it as a great way to go as a medical provider. You do. Why is it so overlooked, Dr. Shealy? Do we know?
Of course, because the American Medical Association and the American Medical Schools are owned by the pharmacomafia. Lock,
Okay.
stock, testicles, ovaries, and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you that some of the men and women who are looking into my medical care that are mainstream doctors and nurses, and they ask me what I'm doing, and I talk about vitamin C. It's like, be careful. Really, be careful with vitamin C. I have a feeling they think I'm taking more than I should because I'm taking more than the recommended, mainstream recommended dosage. I'm taking what you take. I'm taking what other instructors who are on the air with us as medical doctors are taking as well. So, I mean, you're in concert with them, and I'm following your recommendation, but they're thinking that I'm taking too much.
St. Georgie, who discovered vitamin C, I met when he was in his early 90s. He took 8 grams a day. Mm-hmm. Linus Pauling, the great Linus Pauling, took 25 grams a day. Now, I've never known anybody personally who could take even 10 grams, probably by mouth. But Linus Pauling supposedly took 25.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how important he thought it was.
Okay. Now, your body can't keep the vitamin C in the system. It's removed very quickly, isn't it?
Within 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, if someone, what is the difference between oral vitamin C, Dr. Shealy? Let's say 2 grams twice a day, so a total of 4 grams, or 4,000 milligrams, which is the same amount total for a day, versus an IV intravenous infusion of, let's say, 50 grams of vitamin C. Now, other than the difference in the quantity, what is the difference in the delivery system, intravenous versus oral? Well,
intravenous, of course, gets to the cells instantly. Mm-hmm. Orally, it has to be absorbed, and it's much slower, etc. The 25 grams mainly, or 50 or 100, IV significantly improves immune function. That's its biggest. But there's one other thing it does. It helps actually chelate out some toxic metals like aluminum.
Mm-hmm. How about, would it chelate out copper and magnesium and silver as well?
Well, certainly magnesium. That's why we add to the IV a Myers cocktail, which includes, when you get up to 75 or 100 grams, 4 grams of magnesium chloride.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I've got to tell you, I witnessed the before and after Myers cocktail. I was at your clinic, and Dr. Sergey Sorin was there on duty, and he had, or I don't know if he was on duty, but he's there, and he had some sniffles, and he's an emergency room doctor, so he's exposed to everything. And the amount of stress that he has on him, although he would probably not want to admit it, is enormous. Absolutely enormous. I mean, he's dealing with, he's got lives in his hands that could end any second. And I'm sure they have, based on, gunshots and all kinds of things that he deals with. But I saw him one day. He had some sniffles. And I know he took a Myers cocktail.
With 100 grams.
And the next day, 100 grams, 100 gram Myers cocktail, 100 grams of vitamin C. I was there. And the next day, you wouldn't have been, no sniffles, absolutely sniffle-free. He looked great. And I said, wow. He goes, yeah, Myers cocktail absolutely works. So, I felt the Myers cocktail. I know the results. Same thing with him. Fabulous results. However, I have not met any other doctor in Springfield in a hospital setting, nor a nurse, who has ever heard of a Myers cocktail.
Well, again, remember, the medical system is owned by the pharmaco mafia. Owned.
And
controlled.
And the same doctors, nurses, and medical practitioners are all saying the same thing. You get all of the vitamins, minerals, nutrition in your food.
And they are ignoring other facts. In the 70s, Ross Hume Hall, a Canadian biochemist, PhD, wrote a book called Food for Naught. And he pointed out 40 years ago that because of the deficiencies in the soil itself, the food in the grocery stores is deficient in vitamin and minerals, period. And if it was deficient 40 years ago, imagine what it is today.
Right, because we've been farming on that same soil. As a matter of fact, Dr. Shealy, I mentioned this on the air, that we have wood ashes and from our outdoor wood furnace. And we have a pile of it, and what we do is we spread it in our garden. Every year we take it out, spread it, in the winter, rototill it in, give it some time to decompose and get absorbed by the soil. And those are the minerals that the trees picked up from the deep in the soil over the years of maybe 100-year life of the tree before they died, and we cut them up and burn them as firewood. So we're putting that back into the garden, and the garden grows really, really well as a result of, I guess, the fertility of our soil.
Well, one of the reasons is I've lived on a farm for the last, since 1969, is to raise my own vegetables and a lot of fruits.
Yeah. Now, I got to tell you, though, that if you go to the Chinese factory outlet, Walmart, and you look, or you go to any other supermarket, and you look at the tomatoes, if you look at, they're all the same size. If you look at the bell peppers, they're all the same size. If you look at the heads of lettuce, they're all about the same size. And the produce looks like it's designer produce. Now, using heirloom seeds, we don't get quite the visual consistency. We don't get the absolutely perfect designer-looking produce from our garden that you see in the grocery store. However, I believe that ours is more complete in nutrition, and theirs is less.
Oh, it has to be. Has to be.
Yep. And one of the things that we're not doing as farmers, and we're just putting NPK on the fields. I'm talking about most farms. We're not putting back organic, complete replacements for all of the minerals that we're taking out of the soil. We're just taking them out, and not replacing them. And that's
when
the problem.
I was growing up, my grandfather used guano, which is bat dung.
Yeah. And there's an island, Nauru, I believe it's called, and that island is a stopping point where birds would fly across the ocean. They'd stop, have a few fish, and then continue on their long journey. And over thousands of years, this island built up, and it's nothing but bird poop. And we've been mining that and using that as fertilizer, but I don't know how much of that's left. But that would be really good fertilizer. That's compared to the commercial fertilizers, which are, not the same thing.
Oh, I just looked this up, by the way. Guano is not just bat dung, it's also seabird dung.
Okay. There you go. So that would be very similar to what I'm talking about from this island. But Dr. Shealy, what I've noticed with vitamin C is that I believe that it reduces the feeling of pain. Is that true, or is that just...
Oh, absolutely. The place where I have found it the greatest use is in cancer pain. I have had patients who are terminal, and even though if we do it early, I think there's no question that IV vitamin C can reverse cancer. But, when they have a week left to live and are bad, a 24-hour drip of vitamin C will keep the pain totally at bay with no narcotics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you that an IV drip of vitamin C that I've received from you in the past, I've had some really serious chest pain. It absolutely goes away. And it will stay away for 4 or 5 days, maybe a week.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's been my experience with many people. I've been using this since the late 70s.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you give yourself a Myers cocktail? Are you able to give yourself an IV? Take your right hand and
and I've had 2 this year since that little problem I had was a surgical complication in April.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what did that do for you? When we come back, tell us the results, please, if you will, of the IV vitamin C in your body. We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy and I are sharing some pretty intimate thoughts. We'll be right back. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, and Dr. Shealy, you and I were talking about intravenous vitamin C, and what was the reaction or the medical benefit that you saw when you received intravenous vitamin C?
Well, I need to let people know what I'm talking about. When I was 18, I had shingles, and the chief of dermatology at Duke University treated my lumbar spine for 2 weeks with X-ray therapy. That has made my lumbar spine look about 1,000 years old, and I was beginning to get weakness in my legs from overgrowth of, arthritic changes. So on April 11th, I went to Cleveland to the best, I thought, and I still think, neurosurgeons in the country to have a laminectomy. That is, they removed the bone over the entire lumbar spine in the back. Did well for 24 hours. All of a sudden, I was paralyzed in the left foot totally, and the bladder and the bowel. And then, with all that stress, and of course all the magnesium lost from all that stress, I developed auricular fibrillation. My heart, at 160, irregular. And I tried to tell them, if you just give me magnesium, this wouldn't have happened. I mean, it isn't just the vitamin C in that case. Well, they didn't. Of course, they put me on some stupid drug. So when I got home, the first thing I did was take a Myers cocktail. It's probably just 25 grams of vitamin C, but 4 grams of magnesium chloride, and within 6 hours, the auricular fibrillation was gone without drugs. So that was one. And then a few weeks later, I just wasn't feeling that I was making adequate progress, and I took another one, probably, I think I took 100 grams that time, just an extra boost. And, marked increase in energy is the most important thing I got in that situation. And by the way, my bladder and bowel recovered within 10 days of my getting home, and within a couple of days of having the IV, and my left foot is at least 50% recovered.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Shealy, I talked to you shortly after you got home, and I guess I talked to you after you had that IV vitamin C cocktail, and you sounded absolutely great. And I saw you in person in your clinic, and you look absolutely great. So you wouldn't, a person wouldn't have known that you had been through all that trauma.
Well, I do consider for almost any illness a vitamin C Myers cocktail to be one of the most healing things I know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I can tell you that, the reaction that I've had was all positive, and, I've referred to it as the fountain of youth. And you and I talked about Hillary Clinton's final debate with Donald Trump, if you want to call it a debate. She didn't look all that great, for the previous debates. But all of a sudden, people are talking about, what is this bag that she has on her leg? It looks like, she's got a catheter, and they could see this, what looked like a tube in her pants, tight against her leg. And, but she really performed incredibly well, better than I've ever seen her. And I asked you on the air if that was a medical miracle, and we talked about that. And I think you believe that she did have a Myers cocktail, and her performance was outstanding. Not that I like her.
So,
I'm just talking about her performance.
I know. I'm just saying miracles do happen. Anything that would improve that bag is good.
Dr. Shealy, I was talking with a young man recently, and he was asking me about coconut oil, and he asked me to ask you about coconut oil. And he says, it's recommended that you cook with coconut oil. It seems to work really well on skin irritation. Some people brush their teeth with it. He has put it on dogs. He has a dog who bit her hair off because of a flea and a hot spot, and the dog just kept chewing, and bit the hair off on near her tail. And so he applied coconut oil on the red, irritated skin that the dog caused herself because of the flea that was driving her crazy. And I'll tell you what happened when we come back, and also about psoriasis. Class, if you'd like to go to Dr. Shealy's website, normshealy.com, normshealy.com. And if you'd like to read his optimal health section, it's on the website, normshealy.com. If you'd like to buy some of his products, including his youth formula, which is vitamin C, 2,000 milligrams plus 1,000 milligrams of MSM plus molybdenum. I take it daily. I take 2 twice a day. If you'd like to consider that, normshealy.com. Plus the bliss oils, plus the books. It's all right there at normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, so I was talking to this young man about coconut oil, and he said, well, it's the most amazing oil. He cooks with it.
Yep.
And he put it on his has 2 dogs, and they're outside dogs, and sometimes they get fleas, and they can't stand the fleas, so they'll try to bite the fleas and stop the fleas from biting the skin of the dogs. And he'll apply it to the hairless area where the dogs have chewed off their hair, and within a week, he says, the hair's growing back. The skin looks so much better, and it's healing quickly. And he's even applied it to himself where he believes he might have some psoriasis, and that cleared up.
Yes, coconut oil, especially virgin coconut oil, is definitely, unequivocally, one of the greatest healing things you can put on a wound in people.
Mm-hmm. 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 And are there any concerns? Are there any cautions? So if you have like for example, a psoriasis patch, he just puts some on there, and within a few days, it seems to be gone or almost all gone. Is that what you would expect?
Yes, absolutely. But I would always advise that in addition, you should have adequate vitamin D3 and omega-3 fatty acids that go into your mouth instead of on the skin.
Vitamin D, I'm writing this down. Vitamin D3 and omega?
Omega-3, orally.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In addition. Okay. And let's see. So do you have any concerns about applying it to skin? Could you apply too much?
I don't think so.
Okay. Now, we're not talking about, 100% coverage. We're just talking about
it actually,
patches.
well, it's antibacterial, so it will help infections and everything.
Mm-hmm. How about orally? I was reading on the internet about, it says that it's been demonized in the past because it contains saturated fat. Coconut oil is one of the richest sources of saturated fat known to man, with almost 90% of the fatty acids being saturated. Is there any concern about that?
Another stupid, ignorant medical stuff for the last 60-plus years is saturated fat. It is insane. And coconut oil has particularly healthy ones. So, the whole thing. Broder Barnes, a great physician of the last century, demonstrated that it isn't the fat, it is the blank carbohydrates that create coronary artery disease. You can eat, huge amounts of normal, wide range of fats and meat and vegetables, but when you couple it with carbohydrates, especially sugar and all the junk sugars and artificial foods, that is what causes heart disease, not fat.
Okay. So that means no pasta, right? Except for...
Minimal.
Yeah. Okay. And let's see. What I'm reading says that saturated fats not only increase healthy cholesterol, known as HDL, in your body, but it helps convert the LDL, the bad cholesterol, into good cholesterols. So should we be... Okay, so if we're going to make some scrambled eggs, which I try to eat every day, farm fresh scrambled eggs, what I've been doing, instead of using an oil in the cast iron little skillet, what I'm using is butter. Should I switch to coconut oil? Well,
I don't like the taste of coconut in my eggs, but other than that, yes.
Okay, all right. I will do that, and I'll try it, and I'll let you know what my reaction has been. Have you heard of ear piercings curing headaches?
No, I have not, but anything's possible, I guess.
This young man was telling me about that he had read something about it, that specific locations of ear piercings can cause headaches. So, class, I'm not advocating you go get all these piercings, and trying different spots and end up with ears that look like Swiss cheese. I'm not recommending that at all. I was just asking the question if Dr. Shealy had known about that or heard about it or read about it. Okay, how about natural vitamins versus synthetic vitamins? Is there a difference?
Oh, right. I'm sure there's a huge difference. The research on that is, nobody has done enough proof that we could say that unequivocally. But given my choice, I would always take natural.
Okay. How about the timing of vitamins? Is there a time that's best? Like, for example, if I'm going to take your youth formula, and I'm going to take 2 of them, would I be better off taking them first thing in the morning, before breakfast, upon arising, with breakfast, after breakfast, right now, just before, 11 o'clock in the morning, during a break on the broadcast, with lunch, afternoon, with dinner, before bedtime? What are the best times?
Most people say it's better with food. I have to admit that I take mine mostly first thing in the morning with water, and it works fine.
Okay. What about with tea? Now, for example, there is a peach-type tea that's offered. It's kind of like a non-caffeinated type tea.
Well,
it does not have...
If I take mine with plain old water, I think even regular tea or even some coffee, I don't think that... The most important thing is getting them into your body.
Okay. Okay.
Now, everybody is unique, and some people are going to have digestive things one way or the other. But as you know, I take a couple of handfuls.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any concern about any other beverages? Like, for example, isn't grapefruit juice, doesn't that multiply the effect of certain medications?
Yes, it does. Again, I probably would not use grapefruit juice, but orange juice would be okay.
Okay. As delicious as grapefruit juice is, I'm avoiding it for, that multiplier effect.
Right.
Okay. What about black pepper and vitamin C? I've been reading that black pepper may be a positive, what would you call it? Catalyst, maybe?
Yeah.
With vitamin C?
The greatest benefit is with curcumin, the extract of turmeric. Curcumin is almost not beneficial at all unless you couple it with black pepper. So I think it could have a beneficial effect in other things too.
Okay, that's curcumin and black pepper.
Right.
Okay. Now, when you say black pepper, Dr. Shealy, are we talking about the same kind of black pepper that would come out of a salt and pepper shaker, that kind of black pepper?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you found any positive benefits or negative benefits regarding grinding your own peppercorns versus pre-ground?
I have not, so I can't tell you. But, black pepper improves digestion in most people. Mm-hmm. It is what's called a carminative, which is a soothing thing to the intestine. It helps to break down fat for digestion. It's really a wonderful food.
Interesting, because I would have thought that black pepper would be touted as something that would disrupt your digestive system. It would be an irritant, but that's not correct.
No, it actually is an antioxidant. It's got orox in it. It makes a whole bunch of foods better absorbed. It has benefits on thinking. Interestingly, it's anti-inflammatory and can even help peptic ulcer. It's a wonderful food.
Okay, so just add black pepper to taste. Is that what we're saying?
Exactly.
Okay. Let's see. I'm looking at my my questions for you here. What about snoring? I got a question from another. Well, this person is a late 20-year-old, and she was telling me that she snores, and she would like to know what causes snoring, and is there something that she could do about maybe snoring less or not snoring?
Well, if you sleep on the side, that's the most important thing. There's no question. Sleeping on the side can benefit or prevent one from snoring. It's excess mucus. A lot of people have problems if you sleep too deep, if you drunk alcohol within 3 hours of going to bed. A lot of sleeping pills increase the depth of sleeping, so that's more likely to cause it. If you're overweight, that's a great cause of it. The uvula, that little part of the soft palate in the very back that sticks down, some people have an extra long uvula, and it actually has to be removed occasionally.
You're talking about removing a portion of the uvula?
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about that when we come back. Dr. Shealy's with us. Class, I just have a couple quick headlines I want to read to you. Drudge Report: Hurricane Maria batters Puerto Rico with a force not seen in modern history. Millions without power. Winds like horror movie. Rivers burst banks. Direct hit. Lights out. That's Puerto Rico. So class, if you're inclined to pray, if you would consider praying for those in Puerto Rico, as well as Florida and Texas, who have been battered by hurricanes recently. Kyle in Montana, welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Vince, Dr. Shealy. I had a quick question, and I hate to take you down a rabbit hole this close to the end of the program, but I've been thinking about some things, Dr. Shealy, about testosterone in men. And I noticed, I'm in a little over 60, and I'm working out 3 times a week, and I used to muscle up so incredibly. I mean, literally, I could rip shirts out, but when I was like 45 years old, after working out for a few months, it would just put muscle on immensely. And I used to work out with 375 pounds. That was my working weight. So, but it seems like since I've hit 60, I'm working out 3 times a week, approximately 50 pounds, 3 sets of 20 with all kinds of different things. And I'm not putting on muscle like I used to. I'm getting stronger, but not putting the muscle on or in getting as strong as fast as I used to. But and I assume that is true. I mean, normal. But my question is, you hear about these things that say, it takes the belly fat off. It increases your testosterone, and there's these herbal supplements or different things. And I was wondering, number one, what you think of them, without getting, hormone injections, because I've heard those things are horrible to get the testosterone shots and that kind of thing, but or therapy that way from the pharmacia thing. But I'm wondering what you think, number one, and number two, is there anything that a guy could do to increase his body testosterone?
Okay, let me answer that before it gets too late. First, second, third, you need DHEA, not testosterone, and you don't need DHEA by mouth. You need to make your own. There are 4 natural ways for increasing your DHEA. Number 1, Fire Bliss. Number 2, Youth Formula. Number 3, Natural Progesterone Cream. Number 4, Magnesium Lotion. If you use those 4 things, it will raise your DHEA an average of 250% and help you make testosterone.
Wow. All right. That's fantastic. I'm sorry, too, Vince, that I haven't been able to call in very much. You know what it's like at the end of gardening season, and you're trying to get everything in the, you know what it's like. I know you do. So, anyway, I appreciate the program, but I haven't been able to catch it a whole lot lately. You're busier than a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. So, anyway.
Kyle, thank you so much. Dr. Shealy, would you mind repeating that one more time? DHEA, Raise It Naturally, Fire Bliss, you can get that on your website, normshealy.com. Your Youth Formula, you can get that on your website as well, normshealy.com. And what were the other 2?
Natural Progesterone, or EUGESTERONE cream, and Magnesium Lotion. And I've been using those things for the last over 10 years. And my testosterone level and DHEA are normal.
There you go. Great. All right, Kyle. Anything else you'd like to ask Dr. Shealy?
Nope. Just thank you so much for being there.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shealy. Kyle, thanks for calling in.
You bet. Bye.
Dr. Shealy, we were talking about the uvula, and sometimes you have to have it shortened. So how is that done? Is that done with a local anesthetic?
It can be done on a local anesthesia, and it is a great help for snoring, and sometimes for those people who have sleep apnea. It has been known to help cure that. But it requires a very competent otolaryngologist.
Okay. Now, too short's no good, too long's no good, and it will change your voice, won't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So those of you radio broadcasters who are thinking about that, you might want to check out how your voice is going to change. You might not be recognized after it. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us. I'll see you next Wednesday.
Terrific. Have a great week.
You too. Bye-bye.